Welcome to Make That Paper, the show where we talk about all the crazy jobs we do to make the cash we need to pursue our artistic dreams.
And to buy apology gifts for our representatives, because sometimes we can't help publicly embarrassing ourselves.
That's true. On this episode, let's learn about the cartooning career, then get down to the Jingle Writing Jam, and if we're lucky, we might find out about the Outlaw Life. We are your hosts, Jamie Parker Stickle.
And Jason Bieber.
And today we are talking to an award-winning commercial and short film director who was also the president of the Harvard Lampoon.
His dark comedy short, The Call of Charlie, played at 88 festivals in 12 countries, earning 45 awards, including multiple wins for Best Director and Best Short, and his cartoons regularly appear in The American Bystander, which is required reading for the American nerd. I'm paraphrasing.
We are such a fan of his work and of him as a person, and we are so excited to have him here. Please welcome to the show the phenomenal Nick Spooner.
Yes!
Fanfare. Hello. Pause for applause. I'm sorry I'm underdressed.
I was going to chastise you.
I'm gonna see how many people are watching this season, because we had so many requests, like tons of emails for us to put it up on YouTube visually too, because we were just audio up until this season. So this is perfect timing for you to be dressed up for this podcast.
It is.
Well, I'm so glad. I got this. I'm cribbing it from Paul Feig, who always wears a suit on set. But he said it's more because he's able to walk into any hotel and take a crap without anyone asking him a question. So there's that.
I love him. That's so good.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was really funny.
Well, we're off to a great start.
We are. Listen, I didn't realize that there was a barrier to crapping at hotels, but I'm going to take that into consideration next time I have to drop trow.
But you're a New Yorker, so like you've never ever thought. I mean, you're a Manhattanite, I should say that. So you just felt entitled. The moment I met you, you like had this air of entitlement about you. You walk into anywhere and do anything you want, and I was like, you can't do that. And you're like, watch me, I can.
Mm-hmm.
Wait,
and you could.
Jason, did you go to collegiate?
I went to Buckley.
That explains it.
My brother went to collegiate.
There you go.
Yeah. We own this. We own this city.
This is our town.
For 500 years before it was a city, it was our city.
Who run Bartertown?
Bill, put your answers to me.
Listen, your dark comedy short, The Call of Charlie, has sat with me all night. I had dreams about it last night.
Oh, good. It worked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's
deeply insidious.
I'm just...
I know.
Cast of actors.
She makes it so easy to edit this.
Yeah.
I can't stop laughing because Jason was watching it first, and then it was one of those things where I was on the opposite side. I was working on someone else's script, and I was like, what are we watching? And I had to like crawl over, and I was like, what's happening? This is not right now. Look, I felt like Mystery Science Theater 3000. I had so much commentary during this film that I was like, that is the most successful film I have ever watched in the past 5 years. Because I couldn't stop talking through it. To me, that is like, when you're questioning everything, that's success.
Wow. Like, why was this film made?
Yeah.
Who paid for this?
What the?
How'd you get this? Those actors are some of my favorites. Like, I was like, wow. Okay, first of all, though, did they sacrifice her in the end? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, that was the idea.
Okay.
That was the general idea, is that she was the willing participant in, and gleefully just stepping in as tonight's sacrifice. Yeah, it was. Well, it started because I had a new rep. We have reps in commercial advertising, and this person said, "Well, you're not a real director unless you have a short film." So I said, "Be right back." And like 14 months later, I came back. I'm like, "Here you go," and
wow.
But it was so weird and dark and off that it actually was useless in terms of getting commercial work, unless it, stars a creature. But it was my first short, and it was my first foray into festivals. It did way better than I imagined it would. But it didn't exactly lead to that 3-picture deal.
Right.
But it was worthwhile. It was a great time. I was lucky to get Brooke Smith. I went to high school with her brother, so I conned her into taking a role.
There you go.
Evan Arnold, whom I knew from the casting circuit in Los Angeles, I saw him in the final episode of Mad Men, and he has a soliloquy in it. And I was like, oh my God, he's the guy to deliver this long bit at the end. And he is hilarious and bizarre. But it was an excellent cast.
Yeah.
It nearly killed me. It was 2 days, like 140 setups, 2 cameras, special effects, makeup. But the best part that didn't happen was Brooke. I thought it would be hilarious if we had a celebrity play the monster, because the Cthulhu character was always.
I was going to say, is it Lovecraft?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. It is a love based on the Call of Cthulhu, which is a famous Lovecraft bit, short story. And I tried everybody. I wrote letters and got no's from everyone, from Ryan Reynolds to Jake Gyllenhaal to Jim Carrey. I actually wrote a very nice no thank you.
Wow.
It was a long list of people. Michael Richards, I thought would be great, because we wouldn't know it was Michael Richards. But the best part was Brooke actually is friends with Marilyn Manson. And I have an email from Marilyn saying, I'm in. And then about a week before the shoot, Marilyn just went MIA, which was probably just as well. Yeah. But I thought it would have been hilarious if you just did the whole show, and then in the credits at the very end, it was like, and Marilyn Manson is Charlie.
Yeah. Like, you don't even have to show up to set. We just want you to say, okay, so we can put your name in the credits.
It was me. Yeah. I even hollowed out the nostrils, but as part of the rider, I was anticipating.
It looked deeply uncomfortable.
It was like a torture device. I put it on my head, and I was like, Jesus, get it off me immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Get Marilyn Manson in here.
Who were we talking to? Oh, John Lear. So we had John Lear on the show a couple weeks ago, and he was the caveman in the Geico commercials. And he was talking about like how much torture it is to be in prosthetics and to have all of that makeup on, and he can do it pretty well. But there are actors, that he said that they just freak out after 30 minutes. They're like, get it off me now. It's too much.
Yeah, my friend Sven Holmberg stepped in, and he was such a good sport, but it was hard on him for sure.
Yeah. Wow.
Still mad at me. Yeah.
It's never going to be in anything you do again, even if it is a 3-picture deal. I love that.
One geeky question though about the functional prosthetics when the eyes are blinking. That's always in close-up, so no one was wearing the suit for that. That was a separate thing, right?
I'm glad you asked. I am a huge fan of in-camera practical effects. When I was a kid, I thought I was going to work, for, like Smith or Savini or one of the great prosthetic makers. It's what I wanted to do, and I loved horror. So no, we have the someplace in my office. I have we had a practical mask and arm pieces, and the mask had a bib that came all the way down the chest and down the back. So it was really great. I designed it, and I had these guys custom make it. But then after we shot, I went to a friend of mine in Australia who does special effects, visual effects, and I said, just add an occasional blink. And people think the entire thing is CG, just for an occasional alligator eye, shark eye sort of.
Yeah.
God. Okay. So the blinking is not a practical effect.
Nope. Just simple little eyelid shutting, but it sells it in a way that made it really unsettling, and yeah. So I loved that. Tiny little touch went a long way.
Yeah, it did.
Well, Nick,
before his position.
let me get into. I'm gonna drill down now. Before you were making award-winning short films that leave us unable to sleep, and before you were
Seriously.
directing commercials, you were having to make some paper doing other things, and some of the things you told us about. You said you were doing cartooning. Cartooning was paying your bills. How long? When did you start that? How did you get into cartooning?
Are you illustrating and writing the cartoon?
Yeah, almost all the time. Sometimes friends will suggest an idea or a caption or something, and we'll work on that. But usually, yeah, it's me walking around for an hour outside saying, "Oh, a snail falls in love with a tape dispenser," even though that's not me, that's Sam Gross. But it was actually never a side hustle. I in college, I was part of this thing called the Lampoon, which was something I wanted to do from the time I was in fifth grade. I read a book called The Board of the Rings by Beard and Kenny, who were the Harvard Lampoon guys who graduated and founded the National Lampoon. And so in fifth grade, I actually got sent to the principal's office because I was reading this book.
Wow.
And I was like, so comedy can be dangerous. And
It sure can.
years later, I actually eventually got into that college. And fall of freshman year, I was admitted to the Lampoon as a cartoonist. So I did that for the 5 years I was an undergraduate. And then I really didn't do it again. I did storyboards. I've storyboarded every live action project I've ever done.
Wow.
Because I'm a control freak, and why waste money that can go to the art department or some nice vintage glass or something. And I was kind of too intimidated and not confident in my cartooning style. And then about 5 years ago, this magazine called The American Bystander began with a lot of alum from National Lampoon, which is no longer a thing. Mm-hmm. And I submitted a cartoon, which was actually a Cthulhu joke. Publisher loved it. We became friends, and I've been contributing pretty regularly ever since. And now I am a featured cartoonist.
Wow.
I understand. So as far as a side hustle goes, it is not lucrative.
Okay.
It's
all right.
a passion project.
Unless I'm able to churn out 1,000 of them a year, which is not a possibility. But it's a huge rush for me and a honor to run alongside some of my cartoonist heroes like Sam Gross, George Booth, who just passed away, Roz Chast, M.K. Brown. I mean, all of these amazing cartoonists, plus top humorists from Spy, head showrunners from Letterman, all of these, members of Monty Python. It's really an amazing forum for American humorists. And so to be included in that bunch at like $100 a pop makes me feel pretty good.
Yeah.
And it keeps my pencil sharp in between shoots.
Literally and figuratively.
Exactly.
So let's talk for a second. I want to ask you about that because you've done, your national commercials are like major crazy. You are the guy. And you talk about horror and you enjoy horror. So was your idea that you'd come out and be a film director and you ended up in commercial directing, or how did that transpire for you?
Well, I'd been on the set in one way or another since I was a little kid. I acted in commercials locally. I was like fat kid number 2 at the Thanksgiving table for Stop and Shop. And I took a year and a half off before college to work on the set for a production company in Boston doing local commercials, rock videos.
New Kids on the Block videos.
Yes.
I'm just asking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Exactly. And
the right stuff.
Feel it.
I'm just saying.
New Edition.
Vibration.
Wow.
Yeah. And studied film and animation in college. Got out of college and I was like, forgot to focus on something. Oh shit. Moved to LA thinking I would be an animator for Ren and Stimpy.
Wow.
Yeah. And they were like, no.
Wow.
You are nowhere near good enough to even be a storyboard artist for us. So Ogilvy and Mather Advertising was walkable from my house, 10 minutes from my house near Little Brea Tar Pits. And I walked in and I said, I think I can do this. And they go, how does 23,000 a year sound? And I'm like, amazing.
With benefits, I'm sure.
Eventually.
Eventually.
But I had an amazing partner, and I got into it there. Transferred to the office in New York. That will come back later as relevant. Got a position at Comedy Central kind of doing this, and I just started writing and directing stuff for them right away because it was like they let you do anything you wanted there. It was still a very young network at the time.
Yeah.
With no real rules. And I said, here, I wrote an image campaign. And they go, great, here's some money, go make it. And that's really how it started.
Wow.
Yeah.
We had Guy Nicolucci on the show, who was one of the two original creators of The Daily Show. And he was telling us, like, you know, in the early onset, Comedy Central was just like carte blanche. They didn't know what they, you know, they just knew make it funny and make it cheap.
Yeah. Writer. And, yeah, and then to winning Emmys for, you know, writing some of the smartest bits on television, which is just like, what a great time to like get in, you know, like when things are starting up like that. It's such a great, amazing experience.
It was the last office job I ever held, but it was the best because really they just let you do whatever. It was such a great place. And Doug Herzog was the president when I was there. And he was one of the guys responsible for making South Park happen, which really defined the network. And yeah, it was an amazing time to be there.
That's great.
So would you say, just jumping back to Ogilvy and advertising at large, you got into advertising not as a goal, but just basically out of proximity to your house?
Yeah.
Like if there was a Stop and Shop even closer, you could be the grocery king right now.
Yeah. Having had the foresight to go through, you know, a great college without any sort of.
I was just going to say,
plan.
yeah. I would say Harvard probably steers you to go Stop and Shop Ogilvy, go left, right? Like they probably give you a little bit of education on which direction to go.
Well, I knew it was going to be film, but I wasn't quite sure how to get there. And I'm really glad I spent the time I did in advertising because now I better understand what it is we're all trying to do and what it is the people with whom I'm working have worked really hard to get. You know, they can work for 6 months to get a 15-second commercial to production.
Yeah. And I worked for Nestle for 7 years in marketing. I was in packaging, but, you know, as a creative, as a writer and an actor, I feel like that gave me so much information on what's going on in this industry. Like, yeah, being on set is great and understanding everybody's roles and what, you know, what we're trying to accomplish here in hours and saving money and whatever. But the marketing aspect of things, you just don't know until you have a marketing degree or you've worked in marketing or, you know, for a corporation behind the scenes for a while to understand actually what money's going towards and why. I guess that's theory. Is that theory? Is that like film theory? Just kidding. Let's keep going.
It counts.
Just a little.
It's theoretical.
It's adjacent. It's
entertainment theory.
Sure.
It's a little adjacent. No, but I agree. Like working for big companies like that really do help you understand better what's happening.
Well, for me, it really made me understand I don't want to be in an office.
Yeah, same here. But now I'm in a classroom and I love it.
Yeah, well, that's very different.
It's very different. It's really fun. Okay, so next question. Jason, I see you chomping at the bit. You're like this.
Oh. No, I'm just making faces over here.
Just trying to make me break.
Yeah. I just want you guys to think I'm listening.
Well, he makes faces at me when I'm talking too much or saying something. Like he's like, no, Jamie's shh. And so I can.
We used to record in the same room, sitting next to each other, and I could just hit her under the table.
Yeah, he would just hit me.
But that's bad audio. Recipe for disaster. So now it's all here.
I knew a director who would hold two long sticks for camera A and camera B on live television, and he'd be like, hit camera A, and then he'd hit camera B. You know,
I think that's effective.
When you were shooting on film, yeah. That was a while ago.
It's effective.
Yeah.
Did you ever shoot on film?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have been around for a bit.
I mean, you
And
look very young, so I don't know where you know what. I know you. I know you have an 18-year-old now, but I mean, you could have had an 18-year-old when you were 16. I'm just saying. I don't know where you started. Yeah. I don't know where you started.
We're not going to push you for that.
I'm not
you
going to
wanna
push you for
share?
that, but you did shoot on film.
I did.
Film.
Yeah, and I was I shot on film. I did an animated film project when I was in college. I think it was the first animation thesis at my school.
We need a copy.
Oh, no, you do. And I'm doing a new one that I'll send you when we're finished.
Okay, good.
But yeah, I always say I'm snobby about, people who have never worked on an Oxberry or don't know how to tell the emulsion side of a work print. But what it did do was that experience, and it was a little bit of a rough transition moving into HD, and I did some of the first
100%.
big HD shoots. But what it did teach you was to treat the medium with a certain amount of respect. Nowadays there are people that just roll and roll and roll and roll and roll, which makes it hell in post for the poor editor. And some agencies or clients like to shoot on 5K for some reason, because I guess they think it's going to be projected on the moon. But note to self: project Super Bowl spot
On the moon. Oh my
Anyway,
God, he's so
very
smart.
nice, yeah.
You're so smart.
But you gotta do it in a
Harvard in the house.
No, so
The Super
it
Bowl
teaches
has to be
you-
on the right. Yeah.
Well, I like to have a low ratio. I like to say, action and cut, or have my first say that. But I do like to treat the medium with respect still, and if you're rolling and rolling and rolling, you're kind of just capturing improv.
Which there's room for, but like after you've got what you need.
I will like a series for actors, because it keeps, when you say cut, they can get out of their head or get out of a good place. And that was actually something I also learned from Paul Feig and Judd Apatow. I worked on the network promotion for NBC to promote Freaks and Geeks.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
That's so great.
Yeah. And they had obviously from Jason Segel to he whose name we do not speak, everybody on that cast has turned into an excellent known actor. But they liked to do series where they got their actor into a groove, and rather than yell cut, they would just shout out, and they were all writers, so they would just shout out alternate lines to just keep it fresh. The actor didn't have to think about it, they just did it. And I'm not saying line reading people either. I'm saying just calling out suggestions while they're fresh, and then after a 2-minute series, you got it.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Like, I think that's great. I love hearing that. I love that that's happening. That happened. I mean, that's the show that, like, sort of, I was their age, and so I was watching it being defined in that moment. Like, that's what I want to do. Yeah, it's so great.
And you did that on the AT&C spot that I was in, where we met.
Right.
And I mean, it's funny because, not funny, but I was there with Claudia Wallace and
Rodney
and Rod. Well, I didn't know Rodney. That's
so
do you know? Do you know how this? You didn't listen? We had Rodney on this podcast. We had never met him before.
He was
Rodney
cast by
Hobbs.
someone else who was producing for us for a special month, and Jason realized and Rodney realized halfway through the show, oh my God, we did a commercial together with Nick Spooner. Like, they were both like, oh my God, that was you.
Yeah, the Nick Spooner players. Shut up, Rodney.
Yeah, shut up, Rodney.
So
that was the line.
Yeah, I love working. The cinematographer on that, Jim Frona, is currently doing this great new show on Apple Plus called Shrinking.
We love Shrinking.
Yeah. And Jim is a beautiful guy, and he is a great cinematographer.
Did you ever work as a cinematographer, or have you always been the director?
I don't know how, when I hear director slash cameraman. I'm like, how the hell do you do that? I
That's
know I could only focus on one thing at a time, but I'm
yeah.
probably pretty seriously undiagnosed ADD. So I can only do 30-second attention span things at a time. What was the question?
Perfect answer.
Did you ever work behind were you ever a
Ah.
cinematographer? Did you ever do DP? I mean,
Uh,
not DP, but behind the camera,
I did.
cinematographer.
I did a little bit during my days, during my year and a half off working in production. I worked in every
Got it.
department, and they were so great. They would be
Yeah.
like, "Hey, kid, you want to learn how to load today, or you want to be on second camera?" So I have done a little bit of it, but especially because I'm doing comedy, there's a lot of writing and rewriting and improv
Yep.
involved. My focus has to be with you all. It
Yeah.
has to be talent.
Yeah, 100%. When you took the year and a half off, and were you union? Were you working non-union gigs? And were they paying you? Like, how did that work for you? How did you
Yeah.
get that?
It was my little league coach. It was it was his place. It was like a side hustle of his that turned into one of the biggest commercial production places in Boston.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and they had a lot of in-house talent, in-house crew. One of their guys who was a cinematographer is Danny Stoloff is a huge cinematographer. He works on The Boys a lot now. So it was some really great talent, and again, another opportunity to kind of just do whatever you want, make mistakes. It was non-union, but Boston was not, in terms of film, was not like a heavy union town at the time.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not like we were getting, our shoots flipped and stuff
Right.
like that. It was the Wild West.
So you've got kind of this, I'm going to call this a magical career, because you have all these things that you've done. I mean, even the side hustles aren't side hustles. They're dream jobs.
Yeah, you're just a regular Boston new kid on the block type. Like, everything happens because
You're the sixth Wahlberg.
you're
I get
super
it.
smart, you're super talented, good looking guy. You just walked in and you were like, I belong here, I'm in a suit. Like, it just happened for you, right? Like,
Where can I
just
take a
smooth.
crap?
We're going to take a crap. Is it on this set? I'll just jump in. I'll jump
Well,
in.
Is this a working
actors.
toilet?
Yes, no. I've been really lucky in that all of the random stuff I loved doing that had nothing to do with school or advancing myself, I just loved doing it.
That's right.
All kind of only makes sense in what I'm doing and is all relevant. Anything I've done. I mean, even, me doing sculpture, I've made sort of miniature matte sculptures in the hotel room before a shoot, because I thought it'd be cool if there was a smoking volcano behind the cavemen kind of thing. So all of my random interests only really make sense on the set. And like
Only at all make interest.
yeah. So even the side hustles that I do are not really side hustles because they act in service of plan A. And so I always like to say, if a side hustle is sort of a plan B at times, it sort of detracts for me from plan A. So
Yeah.
everything I do kind of needs to work. Well, not necessarily, but it is nice that I get rewarded for all of my random interests and
Yeah.
music and making stuff, and it all kind of makes sense in one place.
I agree with that. And that's what I love is if you really have a passion for this business, one, you should be watching TV and film all the time, and commercials, especially Super Bowl commercials, because they're like little films. And then, like, everything you do should be in service to that. I think I agree. Like, don't stop hobbying or stopping things you love doing. Like, how does it fit into the world that you've built for yourself creatively, right? I mean, I love that. I love that.
Well,
Okay,
I think
sorry.
anything can be.
Yeah.
Anything can feed the muse.
Yeah.
As long as you're not rationalizing, doing something that you actually truly hate, saying, "Oh, this will pay off
Ugh.
creatively."
Yeah.
Even if your creative response is sort of an FU to whatever it is you hated doing. For me, I like that it annoys my siblings that I don't have to have a real job.
Oh, my siblings are super supportive, but also every time I like have a job, they're like, I don't understand what you do.
What is it? Yeah.
They always
Where
say,
does
don't
the
under-
money come from?
where
Oh yeah.
why how can you clothe yourself? I mean, they're constantly like, I don't understand what you do.
I get paid every 3 years, but I get paid a lot.
Yeah. No, relatives not understanding what it is we do. My mom used to go to my mom and dad would go to the movies and they'd wait for the credits. And for some reason, when the job best boy would come up, they would be like, that's what our best boy.
He's the best. He's the best.
That's not what I
so
do.
much.
Okay.
That's plan D.
They're like Hercules.
Yeah, that's my favorite scene in that movie.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
good
know. I can't. Okay, so you like horror though, and I want to keep coming back because your short film was so great, and you made it for a particular reason. When are you going to make horror? When are you going to do this dark,
When
full-length
Pepsi
feature?
jumps the shark and just decides to scare the pants off us, or
When those guys want to make sponsor a horror film, I'm good to go. We do have me and some of the people from Charlie, me and the writers from Charlie, the writers of Charlie and I have a great script, I think, a great feature. It doesn't exactly fit the Blumhouse model because more and more it's sort of like, two people in a Zoom chat and then it's like, oh, look, something scary. Which I enjoy. I think it's been great because a lot of horror movies have come out. You just have to kind of write with production budget in mind. I think eventually, I think maybe in a couple of years, we're going to start to lean more heavily into that. We're doing
awesome.
We're doing a sort of follow-up to Charlie in that it's Lovecraftian.
Uh-huh.
But it's a short animated comedy piece with horror elements.
That's great.
Yeah. And so it's just animation takes a lot of time. So we're packing up. We're 7 months into it. I'm just redoing storyboards. I'm just working on reshuffling the shooting boards right now.
That's awesome. Those are great.
Well, that's 2D. These are going to be 3D. It's going to be like stop motion animation, like Nightmare Before Christmas sort of stuff.
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
But
California
practical or digital?
Well, it'll be stop motion animation. It will be shot digitally, but it will feel.
I didn't mean digital. I meant like what's it? Lego is a CG version of stop motion, but it's CG.
No, these are puppets that are being molded and made right now.
Wow.
That's what Brian Assman does too. So we have a good friend that is a horror writer, and he just did a horror short film, which has been picked up for something, I think, by Amazon. But it took a long time working with an artist. I mean, it's so crazy to me how long it takes for things to get made. Even just publishing a book traditionally takes years. I mean, nothing happens overnight. There's so much, I know TikTok is instantaneous, and I'm trying to teach my students, but that's not, those are 15-second snippets of nothing. Real projects, real creativity takes time to finesse and build, and it's so great. And also, do you read? Do you know how to read? You went to Harvard.
Me read good.
Hard. Yeah.
I do read.
Do you read horror? Are you familiar with Stephen Graham Jones? My Heart is a Chainsaw.
I have not read that.
You would love it. It's so good. Stephen Graham Jones is
Even
Stephen King's obsessed with Stephen Graham Jones, and he was on our show, and he's just had one of his books picked up too. And I just see you in this horror thing after watching Charlie. I'm just like, oh my God.
Jamie's trying to make a deal right now.
I know. Which brings me to my next question. Do you think of all your commercial work, he's going to say no, but I'm going to force this anyways, as a side hustle to want to the feature film part of your career?
No.
I knew you'd say no.
No, I don't. These little sort of film haikus that we make.
Yeah.
I love solving a puzzle. I love working with a team of people. I mean, I came up on the set, and there's just something that, and this is sad for a father to, lovely children to say, but I'm only happiest when I'm on the set. Um, I love, and I love just the world that has been created, that I get to be a part of, work with the people with whom I get to work, shoot in the places I've gotten to travel to, and it's all over the world. And the beauty is that no matter where you are, whether you're in Bangkok, or Chile, they all speak the same language. They all speak the same language of film, and everybody has a role. And it's this sort of, it's this benevolent dictatorship that works really well. So I do love it. I would love to do a feature just because I think that we have some good stories that are worth telling.
Yeah.
And it would be a blast. But, there's nothing beats a 2-3 week turnaround, and then you're on to the next thing. You could toil on a good idea for 2 years and then have your movie suck. Yeah. And then you're like, well, now I've also lost relevance in the commercial realm and I'm doomed.
Yeah.
So would love a shot to do it, but I still have some commercials to make.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's awesome. And there's nothing, aside from commercials, and everyone I know who is a regular actor in commercials, it's their bread and butter and they love it so much. But also, they always say that sitcom's the best job to get too, because you go home at the end of the week. Like, your work days are normal 8-hour days, and then you get to go home and, you have your family time and your weekends. So it makes a lot of sense that commercials, would give you that same feeling, for sure. Yeah.
And I get very homesick. I get on the plane to go shoot a job, and on one hand I'm sort of elated and pumped for the project ahead. Yeah. And at the same time I'm like,
This is your apology to your children.
Yeah. Meanwhile I'm like,
yeah. The only time I'm ever happy, I do miss my family.
Yeah.
Yep. I want to ask you about. I'm gonna take us in another direction for a minute, because one of the jobs you said you've done, and this is a facet of you I wasn't aware of, as a musician, as a songwriter, you wrote jingles. And I gotta know, like, what are some of the jingles you've written?
Yeah. Well, that's more recently. When I lived in New York, there were so many venues to play, if you were in a band, that you could point at 3 friends and say, we're a band, and rehearse for get a 3-song demo tape, and then you could start playing. And I did that with some really good friends, with reasonable success. It was a great way to be young, living in New York, and know everybody downtown, know the bouncers at every club. That was a lot of fun. And I wrote a lot of music. And then music has always been an important part of the commercials I make, when I can have it in, when it's relevant. And then about 4 years ago, there's a national campaign, Bob's Discount Furniture. And they were kind of a local New England thing for a long time, and now they're national, and their ads were like always okay, and all of a sudden one day I was like, oh my God, I just saw Bob's commercial. The animation was awesome. It had a concept. It was pretty funny, for what it was, and it was stop motion animation. I'm like, who's doing it? And it was Barton F. Graff, Jerry Graff's company, which was a boutique agency that did amazing work. And so I got in on right after they were closing. They were doing the work for Bob's. They were closing, and I did a shoot for them. And the creative director in-house there at Bob's was like, hey, you're kind of demented. Do you think you could do kind of what the Barton F. Graff people said? And I said, I'll give it a shot. And the first thing I did was, for their Bobapedic mattress campaign, I wrote a 90-second, it was almost like a mini opera, jingle about the mattresses that was then animated. That was tremendously complicated, but it drove people crazy. They get letters all the time. It's like, help, I can't stop singing the jingle, and I did a bunch for them, and I've worked on some for some other accounts. I don't read music, but I have my group of friends here where I live now, I call the Bobapedic Five, and we will get together and work. I'll hum. I said, this is how I kind of want it to go, and I'll hum the notes and everything. And then we'll bring in different musical instruments and players and singers.
Wow.
And like that. So it happened very organically. And I love a good jingle. I think there is no more effective a tool for advertising that stays with you than a good jingle.
And 80s and 90s sitcoms.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Like, why don't we have what is it called? The opening of like Growing Pains. What did Alan Thicke do? Theme songs. We don't have like theme songs anymore. I love a good theme song. Yeah. It stopped in like the 2000s.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess some people think it's old fashioned, but I love it when it works. And if it's one of those
great branding.
I did a radio campaign for Bob's as well, and it was all a take on Funiculi Funicula. And
awesome.
People, again, they're phony, and it's like, I'm stuck in traffic here in Boston, and it's like fucking song,
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, I love doing it. Comedy has a certain rhythm to it. I always kind of think in terms of music. And so being able to actually write those jingles, I'm like, I'm happy to do it, and you're paying me in actual money, so that works too. And
it's great. Yeah. It's like when you do things you love, I have to like hold myself back from saying I would do it for free. Because
don't ever say that.
Don't ever say that.
Don't give it away.
It's really funny.
We've given so much away.
What?
We've given this whole podcast. Whole podcast.
Although, you're in the top 5% of the over 3 million podcasts out there.
Hey, I love that. I love that data point.
Yeah. It's like, move over, Smartless.
Yeah.
Or at least scooch.
I like to tell Smartless they copied us because we dropped first.
Yeah, but they won't take our calls.
They won't take our calls.
No, Jason never gets back to me either.
Bateman, come on, man.
It's because of that thing with his sister. But yeah.
Oh,
she'll never forgive you.
At the Sunset Marquee.
Great. She's so great.
Yes.
So Nick,
yes,
you kind of teased something.
This is where I was going. I'm looking. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You teased an idea, and I can't push it too hard because you seem trepidatious.
Yeah, we're not gonna push it.
Okay. So you want to talk about?
Well, do you want to talk about?
Well, look, the statute of limitations has recently run out.
Thank goodness.
On what it was we were doing. So I'm happy to talk about it. I have not spoken of it really much at all. So here goes.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's the only side hustle I've ever had that actually, well, that's not true. It actually does kind of relate to what I do. So I'd moved to New York. Ogilvy had transferred me to the New York office from LA.
I was wondering how that happened. Okay.
Yeah, they were really a great place in terms of nurturing who they thought, company people. But I really didn't like what I was working on. It was, it wasn't thrilling me. And I've been there a couple of months, and I would stay late so I could sneak into my creative director's office and make long distance calls. Side hustle of its own, by the way.
Yeah.
And promote my band and call radio stations, in Irkutsk, to see if we're getting plays. And I noticed our ECD, who was a famous kind of Mad Men era guy, also in terms of partying, he was there too. And I saw this kid get off, this well-dressed outer borough looking kid in a leather coat, get off, had a briefcase over his shoulder, head right to the ECD's office, door closes, and a couple of minutes later, like pot smoke is pouring out from under the door. And I'm like, I'm an observant fellow. So I did some math, I gathered up my stuff, And when this kid came out 10 minutes later, I got onto the elevator with him and struck up a conversation. And it turned out this kid, who we'll call Sophocles,
Naturally.
he ran one of the very first upscale weed delivery services.
Oh,
Which does not
nice.
seem like a big deal now, but back then,
No.
It's a
you
big
know,
deal.
it was like the Pope of Pot from downtown, and all the hardcore band kids worked for him, and it was scary and dangerous. But this was sort of a business that serviced agency creatives, network executives, Broadway actors, minor celebrities, pro athletes, stuff like that. It was a high-end delivery service. It even had a business card and it just said florists. There was another one called We Deliver. And so I was not making a lot of money. I needed more money. So I started delivering. I'd work at Ogilvy until about 6:30. And then somebody would drop off a backpack and a pager. And there were codes and stuff and a roll of quarters because you had to call from payphones. I'd put on my rollerblades and my pool pads from my skateboarding days. And, yeah. And I would go out and make deliveries.
And get tips.
Well, not tips as much as, I mean, I could make $1,000 a night doing this.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I'm pro marijuana. I don't have a problem with it. And it was crazy. And the stories, it's funny because there's a great show, it's no longer around, called High Maintenance.
High Maintenance, yeah, on HBO, but also the YouTube series before that, yeah.
Yeah, that kid is amazing. And that show there are some episodes that are just poetic. It's a beautiful show, but that was my life. And the random people and the random stories that you would just stumble into. Like one time I walked in to this, you know, skated on the elevator, went up to the 28th floor, and I walk in and it's all these giant Canadian dudes. And they're, you know, and I'm like, well, how much do you want? And they're like, well, we want all of it, eh? You know, and, you know, and it was Mark Messier and a bunch of the Rangers.
That's amazing.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, true. And it was like that. And it worked great for 6 or 8 months. And then it kind of got a little hinky. Some of the delivery guys started getting robbed or worked over.
Yeah.
And one guy got, I mean, you didn't want to get locked up and thrown in the tombs on a Friday night, especially in rollerblades, because you'd be in your socks until Monday till you could see a judge.
Yeah.
So I moved on from the delivery and I helped him create a bunch of clandestine grows because I knew a little bit about that, that's a whole nother story. And then eventually I got out and Sophocles continued in the business until, let's just say he's on the lam.
To this day.
Oh my God.
Still at large, if you
Wow.
Yeah, I have no idea where he is. But the last time I saw him, I think was at my wedding.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
You know, so
Did he have a briefcase over his shoulder?
I don't know, man, but he lammed out. He took off, and it was a great guy. And it was a great experience because it made me feel like I was a part of New York, even though I wasn't born there. I got to meet all these characters. I didn't have to join a gym. You know, I'm skating all over Manhattan every single night.
Did you ever hit the rollerblading circle in the middle of Central Park on your way across? No?
That wasn't there when I was making deliveries.
Oh, okay.
I think you're so brave to do rollerblading through New York.
Oh, I'd skitch off a bus to go all the way up 8th Avenue if I had.
That's insane to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know how the timelines work out, but I could very easily have been one of your customers.
You could have been. You could have been. And
I definitely had. Yeah.
Well, I remember the last delivery I made because you know there's a certain amount of shame. I'm like, I don't want anyone to know I'm doing this. This is just for the money. This is
Yeah.
I'm not hurting anybody. And I made a delivery and I walked in and it was like a group of these rich a-holes from Adam's house at Harvard.
Oh, that was us. No.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's why I quit. And I walked in, they're like, oh, Nick Spooner's the weed guy. And I'm like, shit, I'm out. I can't have this getting around.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, There are definitely, looking back now, I think it's hilarious some of the things that I did, but like at the time, in seeing people, it was like, oh, that's not how I want to be looked at or remembered, or like with
You're
what
out there
is it?
spinning the sign.
Yeah, and people just are like, oh, and you're like, I'm ashamed. I have to go.
Trafficking aside, the headline really is, this is your third job and you're doing what you can to survive, and
Yeah.
fuck what people think.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Fuck.
It's true.
Fuck what people think until your colleagues think you're the weed guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean except.
Except for me.
Yeah.
Well, you did say, and when you started telling us about this, you said this had nothing to do with business. But then you kind of pivoted a little bit and said, but actually this does sort of fit in. How would you say that this job fit into the structure of your actual career?
Well, other than providing a lot of good fodder for character work.
Yeah.
I made a few deliveries to certain creative directors with whom I have worked.
That's amazing. It's okay.
And while that didn't lead directly to work, years later you'd be on the set and the guy would be like, "Hey, didn't you?" And I'd be like, "Yes, I did." So now I got your number. And
what's so interesting to me is how everything seems like such a big deal and how dangerous it was.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a big deal. I'd love to see Sophocles again. He could come home now, maybe, but
yeah, I was gonna say, why can't he come home?
He's living his best life.
Did he steal money?
He's good somewhere. New York State, they're holding the grudge, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the
Maybe
one who got away.
He's in Portland and he just abandoned his car in the storm like everyone else.
I don't think he's in the
That's awesome.
He's in Greece living the good life.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. He's back with the gods.
He's in Canada.
I could go on, and perhaps I will, but I also want to be respectful of your time.
Of your time, yeah.
Yeah.
This was
You've given
amazing.
us the
You're
obligatory
amazing.
hour.
I'm so glad that I got to meet you because Jason talks about you really honestly so often and so much, and he's like, oh, I should call Nick Spooner and see if he wants to hang out. Maybe we can get lunch or something. I mean, like, Jason really loved working with you, and he's just been like your biggest fanboy ever since, and it's very sweet.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, well, man.
I like to hear that. I like to have. I mean, my career is entirely dependent upon the talent with whom I work, especially the actors, and it's totally true. When I hire great actors, I look like a genius and I don't have to do much at all. So I'm very particular about it. I try to make it really fun for the talent. So that's, when I'm in Los Angeles, we'll schmai the schmai.
We can schmai a little. I'll get schmiggy.
Where are you full time? You're not in LA full time?
I'm New York adjacent.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, the college I work for is New Jersey. I work for Montclair State University. But in LA, we have an LA abroad semester for our media students.
LA abroad.
Yeah,
abroad,
LA abroad.
Mm-hmm.
So they're out here from Jersey.
They're separated by a dirt ocean.
Yep, that's correct.
Well, it's not supposed to matter where we live now, and I do like, for actors' sake, self-taping just for auditions. I think is great. I really don't like remote callbacks.
Yeah,
I don't know when that's coming back, but I was always really sensitive to the wear and tear on the actors, and so for auditions, you'd be like, hey man, these are real people. These are real people with real lives who have to worry about daycare and days off and sick days and schlepping 2 hours in traffic to callbacks and sitting in a room with 20 other people that look just like them and hearing everyone laugh in the room. I mean, it fucking blows. And so
the babies in a stroller in the waiting room.
Thank you for understanding that.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to it. So
appreciate it.
This just makes it all seem worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
She showed on Monday, made love on Tuesday. On Wednesday she was down. We fought on Thursday, made up on Friday. But now I'm losing ground. You call me lazy, you think I'm crazy. So why'd you come around? This ain't no savings and loans. You call me lazy, you think I'm crazy, so why'd you come around?